Hello and welcome to another episode of Seen Anything Good Lately. Thanks for joining me. I'm Jason Solomons, and on this show I'm joined by two guests who are inspired on their way by music.
So I shall continue with Call My Agent. Yeah, that's what I'm doing for the foreseeable future.
I was excited that the Bake Off started again.
They are the fabled music writer and author David Hepworth, who founded magazines including Smash Hits and Mojo, and who presented part of Live Aid, the most watched television show in the world ever. He's got a new book out about the British invasion of America by bands in the wake of the Beatles. And there's actor and director Tim Plester, who's been in Game of Thrones and in Afterlife with Ricky Gervais, and has a new documentary out exploring his own journey through the folk music of the American South. Before we go on those odysseys with David and Tim and hear what they've gleaned along the way, I should fill you in on what I've been up to and if I've seen anything good lately. I've started with Ratchet, starring one of my favourite actresses, Sarah Paulson, alongside two of my other favourites, who I didn't know were in it originally, Judy Davis and Amanda Plummer. This is an origins story of Nurse Ratched from One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, although it's not really that too much, which is a good thing, or it could be a bad thing if that's what you want. But it isn't really about that character from Ken Casey's novel or from Milos Forman's film One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. But it is a bit, it's really an excuse for a decent character getting herself a job at a mental facility in sort of the late 40s, and it looks great. The fantastic costumes, and the colours are fantastic. It just feels great, as you'd expect from the prolific producer Ryan Murphy, who did Hollywoodland and Pose. He's behind all the best TV at the moment. I very much enjoyed the first two episodes, and I'll definitely be continuing with Ratchet. Meanwhile, I've finished Us with the excellent performance by Tom Hollander as Douglas Peterson. I enjoyed every bit of its 4 episodes. I thought it was thoughtful, wistful drama, reflecting on the choices you make, about who you are and how you want to be and what shapes you, and if you can change that throughout your life. It's about being a mum and a dad. It's also about being a son. It's all on iPlayer now, and I thought it was very funny in places and very moving in others. Very nicely done, all told. I would have liked a little more about the art galleries, which is very important in the novel, and it starts off in the TV show being about that, but the novel is very much about Douglas's sort of artistic and emotional development through seeing art in art galleries, and that peters away a bit in the series, in the miniseries, but that's all I can nitpick it with. I thought it was terrific, really. I learned quite a bit that I knew already but had forgotten I knew, if you know what I mean, from watching Capital in the 21st Century. That's a very slickly digest doc of French economist Thomas Piketty's unlikely bestseller, Capital in the 21st Century, which I haven't read because it's 700 pages and in audiobook form it's still 26 hours long. So here it is, in about 100 minutes. Just, the history of wealth and who has it, and how they got it, and how they kept it, and a bit on how we all might get a piece of it and share it out a bit better. I have to say, it was entertaining stuff for an economics lesson, from the French Revolution and the British aristocracy to the Industrial Revolution and colonisation and the Great Depression. It was just about as much as they can cram in there in the 100 minutes, and it's set to some good talking head characters who are experts, and it's got some good music, including Lourdes and that great track Royals, which to me just sounds like money.
We didn't come from money, but every song's like gold teeth, grey goose dripping in the bathroom, bloodstains, ball gowns, trash in the hotel room. We don't care. We're driving Cadillacs in our dreams, but everybody's like crystal, Maybach, diamonds on your timepiece, jet planes, islands, tigers on a gold leash. We don't care. We aren't caught up in your love affair, and we'll never be royals. It's a run in our blood. That kind of love's just ain't for us.
David Hepworth is one of the UK's most noted music writers. He presented the Old Grey Whistle Test and Live Aid, and as a publisher, he started up magazines including Mojo and Q and Just 17 and Empire and Smash Hits. He's written bestsellers. He's got a giant vinyl collection. His new book is called Overpaid, Oversexed and Over There, charting the British invasion of bands into America following the Beatles' immediate mania in 1964. 1964. It's a detailed social history of the British bands from the Rolling Stones to the Byrds to the Who to Elton John and even David Bowie arriving in New York and hitting the big time over there like never before or since. And David Hepworth joins me now. Congratulations on the book. That title is was something that the English used to say about the GIs, isn't it, when they came here to the UK? So you flipped it. But was that something that they felt about the British bands that went over there, that they were invading?
Yeah, well, it was a kind of welcome invasion, I suppose, certainly early on. I mean, that's the interesting thing to me about when the Beatles went in 1964, in February 1964. America welcomed them with open arms. You know, it had just decided at the last minute that it was open to this alien, this benign invasion, which is how it was treated for a while. But then there was obviously a lot of friction, and particularly when you started to get the kind of the bands with longer hair and more difficult attitude, and particularly when they strayed outside of the safe haven of New York and Los Angeles into the great heartland, you know, they would come upon quite a lot of abuse.
Who started the long hair? Was that a British thing?
I think it was, really, yes. When the Beatles went to America, they couldn't stop writing about their hair, which is extraordinary when you look at it now, because their hair just doesn't seem particularly long or anything. But compared to the standard kind of swept back American look, it was shaggy and boyish, I suppose you would say. Then the Rolling Stones moved it on a little bit, and then you always had the traditional American inability to understand people who weren't speaking American English, which is very interesting, I think, because the British grew up used to being able to interpret American voices because we have so much American television and films, whereas the same thing doesn't apply the other way around.
No, they have. That's why they only do one terrible impression of a British person, don't they?
Yeah,
all Americans.
they always talk about a generic British accent. Of course, we know there is no such thing as a British accent.
Was it coined a British invasion by a particular American journalist, or was it a music? Or was it just acknowledged that this was happening? As you say, it was welcome.
It was just acknowledged that this was happening because it was so unprecedented. You know, even Ed Sullivan, and you know, introducing the Beatles on the Ed Sullivan Show first time. It's very much kind of, these people have come to our city. They've come from across the sea, and I have to say that we think they're rather nice. You know, because it was like they had nothing to compare it to. You know, that was the interesting thing. And for the British bands, this was a dream come true, because they were going to get to go to a country they had never dreamed in their lives they would ever go to. And that's the thing that I think we find very hard to adjust to nowadays, although it could be that post-pandemic, you know, travel is going to be almost as difficult in the future as it was back in 1961, 62. So the average Briton maybe won't go to America, like the average Briton didn't go to America back in 61, 62. It'll be interesting to see.
You know, you describe in the book quite a lot of the sort of wow factor of arriving in New York, which, you know, to be honest, I still get every time I go myself. I still look up, I still marvel at the bridges when you cross them. The wow factor of these Brits just kind of going, oh, well, I'm in the promised land here, and, you know, I never want to go home again. This is where it's at. But was it always like that? Weren't they a bit homesick? Weren't they a bit like, or were they so young and so full of cum that they just thought, brilliant, let's have it?
I think they probably the latter. The latter was true at the time. You know, because everything anybody was going through at the time, they were going through for the first time. There was no roadmap. You know, nobody had ever done this before. And what happened throughout the 60s, and Pete Townsend was probably the first person to recognize this, is that without America, it's very difficult for British bands to keep going, because they have to keep getting bigger. You know, they have to find fresh worlds to conquer. And America is the obvious one, you know, because it speaks the same language, it's a huge market. And so forth. And if you don't make it in America, you know, and if you don't keep going to America, and of course the Who did this and they still do it pretty much to this day, even though there are only 2 members still living, they still play America once a year. That if you don't do that, you pretty much have to fold up. And so years later, you get the cases of, you know, you get the punk bands go, and very few of them make it. And the classic case of the Jam, you know, really tried quite hard to break America, and about 7 tours of various different kinds, and just couldn't make any impression on America at all. and so came back and broke up. And you can't help feeling that if they'd made it in America, they wouldn't have broken up.
Yeah.
It just provides a new world all the time.
There's some mild surprise in your book, and I've always shared this because I always never worked out why Elton John was so rich, why he was the richest person in the world and the centre of the celebrity world. Never see. And then of course you realise, well, he was huge in America, and we saw it in the film Rocket Man, and you see it in your book, and it is slightly odd to me that America took to him, considering he was taking them a sort of slice of Americana that was concocted in Pinner.
That was the really strange thing to me. You know, a breakthrough record in America was Tumbleweed Connection, which is it's a load of songs that are written completely in thrall to the band's second album. They're all about the Civil War, you know, and the lyrics are written by somebody from Spalding, and the tunes are written by somebody from Pinner, and they're recorded in Wardour Street. And the cover, which is if you look at the cover, it's supposed to be a kind of frontier railroad station. It's actually taken on the Bluebell Railway in Sussex. You know, so this was what we would call cultural appropriation. You know, but somehow he sold it back to the Americans. Do not ask me how he did it. You know, because also, like the Beatles, albeit on a slightly smaller scale, he arrived at the top. So you know, he appeared at the Troubadour, and all of smart LA came, and they all decided he was great. He never had to prove himself after that, really. So it's a bit like the Beatles did, you know, a few years earlier on the Ed Sullivan Show. And that's a very rare privilege to be allowed to do that.
And it's good old country comfort in my bones. Just the sweetest sound my ears have ever known. Just an old-fashioned feeling, fully grown. Country comforts in a truck that's going home.
When did the invasion stop? Your book sort of said, well, Rod Stewart we go on to, you say Bowie arrives with a couple of dresses in his luggage, or is it still going on? I don't know. You say punk had a harder time.
Punk had a very much harder time, because I think it's very hard for it's difficult for punk, for Sex Pistols, for instance. It's very difficult for the Sex Pistols to arrive in America and go, it's good to be here. Because the whole deal of the Sex Pistols was it wasn't good to be anywhere, and particularly not America. And so, you know, it's very hard to sell yourself to America if you don't appear pleased to be there. And so they never really did it. There was a so-called second British invasion in 1983, Culture Club, Eurythmics, Duran Duran and so forth, which is very much driven by MTV, because MTV had launched in the States, but they didn't have any videos, really. Whereas the UK, we had tons, because everybody made one for Saturday morning kids TV or Top of the Pops or whatever. And also British groups had a strong tradition of dressing up and acted the full, which suited the MTV revolution.
Well, there you are sitting behind a fabulous array of vinyl, David. Beautiful. I should have got mine out the back there, but that's really impressive. But you've got more is more there. And when you say, listen, well, everyone at the gig's got a phone, and they can all access every single record almost ever recorded on Spotify, iTunes, or whatever. Yeah. The fact that when you go to a live gig, someone who's curating and sort of saying, I'm going to give you this, this, and this, you don't have to sift through the morass of information or what's available. That's probably something quite comforting in being curated at.
What, you mean in a live performance?
Well, yeah, the live performance being just one aspect of that curation. So you've gone to see someone give you a selection of something that you don't have to, make your own decisions on what you're going to listen to.
I suppose so, but isn't it interesting that people still feel the need to point the camera at it, and somehow capture it at the same time, as if they're going to go home and watch it. They're not going to do, because we suffer from regret. Well, it's as my children tell me, it's FOMO or whatever. We always think there's something better going on somewhere else. It's interesting to me that I'm old enough to have seen the change. That nowadays all forms of consumption of kind of entertainment or media or whatever are made with one finger on the button, ready to take us away from it the second it's not pleasing us. Whereas the whole deal about putting on an LP record, such as I have behind me, is you put it on and you left it on, because taking it off was inconvenient and potentially damaging and all those kind of things. So you had to kind of commit yourself to things, whereas nowadays people don't commit themselves to anything at all.
Yeah.
As in the nature of the technology.
It's interesting. Your last book, which was the LP, but you've probably written
Fabulous
one in between.
Creation,
yeah, Fabulous Creation. That you come out with, I never know which order you've done them in.
Right.
That was the sort of the LP, and it's come back and it looks great behind you. Attempting a similar thing with cinema, in that people going to the cinema have to sit there and see the film that they. I mean, you can walk out, but that's a sort of it seems a bit self-defeating. I'm wondering if cinema is going through the same thing that the LP went through, in that it at the moment is disappearing. People aren't going to the cinema. I presume you haven't been for a good 6 months.
No, I'm not a big cinema goer anyway, but no, I haven't been for ages.
I wonder if it's feeling like outdated technology or outdated experience.
I don't think any of these things ever completely go away. I think there's still the desire to do them. It's a question of how much grief you have to go through to do them, isn't it? The cinema has got to be a really pleasant experience when you get there. It's got to be kind of sensual experience when you get there, so you think that was worth every penny that I paid for it. Which is, I suppose, is a combination of the environment and also the product that you're watching on the screen.
Have you seen anything good lately, David Hepworth?
I tell you what I've watched recently, which in the world of streaming, which thing called Call My Agent.
Oh yeah.
Have you seen that?
I love it. Yeah.
Okay, well, it's very good. And I tell you what struck me, a couple of that and something else. My wife started watching Unorthodox, which then led her on to, what's it called, Shtizzle.
Yes.
And so every time I go down, and these are so many parts, these things, and every time I go down the room downstairs of an evening to get something, it's like my wife's watching Orthodox Jewish television, and I just think, this is an extraordinary kind of side effect of Netflix, isn't it? That suddenly the world's television is on your television. So Call My Agent is a very smart French kind of comedy, more than a comedy. And it wouldn't have been made in Britain, and it wouldn't have been made in America. And a huge part of the appeal of it, I find, is it's French.
Yes.
I mean, not the language, but it's because they look attractive, but in a really distinctive French way. You know what I mean? The actors, they look fabulously, the most beautiful people in the casting book. They're just slightly odd. And it feels like Paris, and you can smell the smoke. And
it's the nouveau Paris, they say. It's the new sort of Paris, that it's got kind of a sort of thrusting Macronist eye on America, and yet distinctively French. And it could be Friends, but it's not. It's taken that on, and it's chic and Parisian, but it's urban and it's professional and it's slick. And it's in love with the cinema, which that's why it has to be French, because you have to have a decent industry where you've got cameos of Isabelle Huppert and Fabrice Lucchini can come on.
But of course, most people don't mean anything to.
That's why I was surprised.
I watched it and I go, oh yeah, I've seen her before, but obviously a French audience would be really familiar with.
And a cinephile audience like me would be going, yes, of course I've seen him. But some of the jokes are pretty, on the nose about the people's films. They're quite sort of as of, Isabelle Huppert they'll take the mickey out of particular films or sort of traits of hers in there. So I think it's really smart. I love it. I can't wait for the third series.
It's very, of course, when you catch up with all these things nowadays, you find that you're already 4 series behind. And then they went away for a couple of years and they came back or something.
Well, at least this little lull has given you a chance to sort of catch up if you're not too far down. Like Unorthodox, I also caught up with Unorthodox because I'm Jewish. Every time there's a Jewish thing on, someone says, "Oh, you must have been watching that," like it's law or something, like it's prescribed. But it did take me a while to catch up with Unorthodox, which I thought was very good. Actually, she was extraordinary. The young girl in it.
Yeah, no, I thought it was good. But I like the idea of other countries' television coming here. Not just American stuff. I think that's very good. unsought bonus of the Netflix revolution.
And one of the things they do have on Netflix, or what I see a proliferation of, and look, I know it's been going on for years with the VH1 sort of documentaries, which you must have earned a few quid at yourself over the years, talking head wise. But you're not watching any music docs at the moment, or are there any decent ones?
It's a streaming series based on my 1971 book, which must be coming out quite soon. Which has been made by the people who made the Ayrton Senna film and the Amy Winehouse.
Oh yeah, which book is that one?
1971, Never a Dull Moment, and so they've been working on this for 2-3 years now.
So this is James Gay Reese and and that lot.
Yeah. And so it's presumably coming out in time for the 50th anniversary of 1971, which is next year. Exactly when, I do not know. The one I must catch up with it. Everybody tells me I've got to watch is the Social Dilemma, is it called?
Yes, I haven't seen it either.
Which everybody says is really, really good and will make you never want to go on Twitter again, But I feel I should know a bit about
these hot topics like that appeared on Netflix. So everyone sort of sees the social dilemma. They go, well, I might watch that. It's amazing the sort of power that the Netflix model seems to have on people. It's like they all at once. When lockdown first happened, everyone watched The Tiger King. Almost the whole world.
It's like I didn't get the memo. But I was aware through social media. Everybody in the world is watching the Tiger King. No, it's odd because it's not the result of standard marketing, is it? It's not like loads of trails on BBC One telling you've got to watch so-and-so, which I'm never convinced work anyway. But yeah, I'm always intrigued by, my children are all grown up now and they'll all end up watching the same things on Netflix. And it's a documentary very often, And you think, how did they all end up doing that? I suppose it's just through the miracle of social media.
It must be because they don't even make a fanfare about it, as you say.
No, they just sneak about that.
Yeah, they drop it, which seems a very casual approach to marketing. It's like a Hansel and Gretel leaving a trail of crumbs.
Yeah. Whereas
dropped.
on the other hand, I have been slightly miffed by how often I've seen the damn trail for the Ewan McGregor, Charlie Ballman latest series about going on a motorcycle trip down South America. Well, if I see that trail once more, I shall scream. Particularly the bit where Ewan McGregor says, and what I like about this is it's going into the unknown. I think, you're not in the unknown. You've got a bloody film crew with you. That's not unknown. It's the most known thing in the world. I refuse to watch that.
Yeah, well, you clearly don't need to. They're doing the Motorcycle Diaries reenactment, aren't they? Which is completely known because lots of people have done it.
I suppose so. Not really. I'm not kept abreast of that. I mean, there's just more stuff than I could write a book about all the TV series I've not seen that I know are really good. I'm just sure. You don't have to tell me Breaking Bad's really good. I'm entirely convinced by it. Never seen it, probably never will see it. Because you can't just dip into telly anymore. You've got to either go all the way in or not be in at all.
Yeah, maybe they're the long players of our time.
Oh, I think they definitely. Listen, that's one of the points I made in A Fabulous Creation is that when the LP went big in Britain and America in the late 60s, what you got was the record companies were scrambling around to find ways of using this new technology. Why did you need long players? Well, okay, that's where progressive music came from. That's where the long singer-songwriter album came from. All these things were developed very much the same way as is happening right now with television, long-form television. So television is being developed for streaming that would never have been developed in any shape or form for the previous world, because it just wouldn't have made sense, because it's the journey is better than the arrival, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's the deal. That's why everybody's always really disappointed about the final episodes of streaming series, because they don't want it to end, really.
Yeah, they don't, and endings are boring. Really, they're not as good as keeping it going. I suppose that's why you get final tracks and sort of fade out sometimes.
Yeah.
Well, it's been fascinating going from the Beatles on the Ed Sullivan all the way up to now, and things we're not going to watch.
Yes. But yeah, so I shall continue with Call My Agent, and that's what I'm doing for the foreseeable future.
Good classiness. Well, I can't wait for the 1971 film. I know that lot, and I didn't know they were developing that. So presumably archival and interviewing the survivors.
Yeah. So it must be showing up quite soon.
Well, I'm looking forward to it because they normally do a really good job. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
Are you going to be in it?
No.
Ridiculous. Not unless you can get your lighting right. David Hepworth, thank you so much for joining me. Congratulations on the book, which is really enjoyable and stuffed with anecdote. There's almost, you could read your book and then you need 18 dinner parties to sort of say, did you know that Tumbleweed Connection was shot at the Bluebell Wood in Surrey? So all of that has been fascinating. Thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you. Okay.
Cheers.
All right.
David Hepworth's Overpaid, Oversexed and Over There is out now, published by Transworld Books. Let's go on another journey through American music now with Tim Plester and his new documentary Southern Journey Revisited. Tim is an actor you may have seen in many things, including Game of Thrones and with Ricky Gervais in Afterlife. He's also a filmmaker. Now, about 5 years ago, he and his co-director Rob Curry made a documentary called The Ballad of Shirley Collins about the lost British folk singer who'd refound her voice and started making albums and performing again. I like that one a lot. And in it, they touch on Shirley's journey as a very young woman with her boyfriend in 1959 into the depths of America. Her boyfriend was the American sound recordist and ethnomusicologist Alan Lomax, and these recordings became known as the Lomax Field Recordings, and they're world-renowned, preserving the voices and the accents and the music of rural America at a very crucial time when they thought they might disappear. So they're the sort of touchstone recordings, both technically and of what they record. When Tim and Rob went to show their documentary about Shirley Collins in America, they thought they'd, try and slightly retrace the route that she took. So they found themselves suddenly retracing this epic, important journey of the Lomax Field recordings. And, while they had a camera with them, they thought they'd make a film about it. And that is this Southern Journey Revisited. And we find out what, if anything, has changed since 1959. Hi, Tim. How you doing?
I'm good, Jason.
You've been out and about filming, right?
Yes, I was on set last week, which was great. Getting back to work felt really good.
How are the sets these days? What's going on?
Well, it's a bit weird. So in order to do the job, I had to have 2 COVID tests to make sure that I was clear. So I know as of last Tuesday, I don't have
That's good
COVID.
to know, isn't it?
I may have contracted it between then and now. I don't know, but I didn't have it on Tuesday, and so I was allowed to film. But social distancing is going on set. Everybody is wearing masks.
In between takes?
In between takes, put the mask back on, which in itself is a kind of one of those extra nightmares in terms of continuity, in terms of making sure everyone's taken the mask off before you do the take.
I can't wait for the first spot of someone in the background in a mask.
I think there's bound to be one. And also, they in between takes, anything that has been touched on set has to be wiped down. There's somebody basically on set who is the COVID expert.
Yeah, which they're not really, because they've only just really learned about it about 3 months ago.
Exactly. I think they're basically whoever was health and safety beforehand is now been elevated to this position of COVID Meister General. And they're quite draconian as well.
But in the meantime, you have forged this career as a director yourself. Which
Yes.
brings us to Southern Journey Revisited. I think both of the films of your recent direction, the one about Shirley Collins that played at the Green Man Festival and that played all over, a really gorgeous film about Shirley. I assume that led you to this current film, Southern Journey Revisited, probably where you got the inspiration from.
So basically, when Ballad of Shirley Collins had played in the UK and Europe, we then had an opportunity to show it in the States. And we decided to organise a very boutique tour of the film in terms of basically for marketing purposes. Let's find out how many of the places we know they went to in 1959 we can get a screening. And then a few of the venues started to ask if we would do a Q&A after the film. So then when it became apparent that we might go with the film, it was then almost like, well, why don't we take a camera? So that's where the idea came from, really, to almost document it for ourselves initially, but then is there a film here to be made as well? And we didn't plan it too much. It was very much flying by the seat of our pants, kind of kick testicle scramble kind of filmmaking. And I think what we found, we were very surprised by how many people we actually found who literally remembered Lomax coming in 1959 because they were kids. They were 6 or 7 at the time, and so they're still alive now, and they remember.
Started in New York, looking at your cinematic map.
And then we went to the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C. and showed it there. But then our real journey started in Virginia. We had a screening at the Virginia Film Festival. And from there, we set out on basically our attempt to retrace their route from 59. So it's Virginia, down into Kentucky, and then over into Mississippi. And they carried on into Arkansas, and they actually ended up at the Georgia Sea Islands on the East Coast. So we only did 3 of the states that they went to in 59.
It's a remarkable landscape, a remarkable kind of history to it as well. Not, it's the less traveled bits of America for sure. And then you go through a lot of racial history, because that's what I mentioned, is it black or white music. There's a bit where you certainly get a good a tour. I don't think it's a librarian who takes you round. She's obviously a very good contact. She's got full of stories. She talks about hipster doofuses. I didn't know if she was talking about you at that point.
I think she was talking about us, which is, we knew that we were being referred to as hipster doofuses, so we decided to keep that in.
I liked it very much because, but you were on the trail of what an extraordinary story, again, one I didn't know. You found this, a gospel group called the Como Mamas in a place called Como.
So, I mean, what's doubly amazing about discovering the Como Mamas is we didn't really know, we hadn't come across the Como Mamas in our research. We weren't really aware of them, but we did a screening, and our screening in Como was actually at the house of a local librarian, who is the person you were referring to. And the audience that turned up that night to watch the film happened to include the 3 Como Mamas. And then on top of that, it turns out that their grandfather, or at least 2 of, I think I'm not sure if they're all related. There might be 2 sisters, So the 2 sisters in the band, their grandfather had been recorded by Lomax in 1959. That was just complete chance, Jason. We got really lucky with that. And so after the screening, we just put the cameras on and basically talked to the audience. And in the audience were the Como Mamas, and they were talking about the fact they remembered Lomax coming to their house.
It's gold, Tim. Gold, I tell you.
They are amazing, and they put a lot of it down to the fact that they listened to music as children.
Well, we'll take us away slightly, and then I'll come back and I'll ask you if you've seen anything good lately, Tim. So here are the Como Mamas. And that is the sound of the Como Mamas. They're great, aren't they? On Daptone Records, as featured in Southern Journey Revisited, directed by my guest, Tim Plester. Okay, Tim, so have you seen anything good lately?
Well, it's interesting. Yeah, I mean, what I have seen recently, I was trying to think when I knew I had to do this. I thought, I have actually seen something at the cinema recently. What was it? Oh, it was my own film, the other night.
Well, it's very good.
And it was nice to see it on a big screen, and the sound design is fabulous. Actually, it's one of the strong points of the film. But aside from my own film, I have seen a few things that I've really enjoyed. Big fan of TV-wise.
Yeah.
There's a show called Ramy, which is about a Arab Muslim in New Jersey, comedy, 2 seasons. I've only seen the first season.
Ramy, R-A-M-I?
R-A-M-Y. It's about this young lad who is trying to be a good Muslim, but he's also a New York millennial. He's first generation, and it's a really it's really funny, but also really kind of the moment. It's really nice to see something about kind of Muslim culture, which isn't entirely negative. It's trying to
I don't know it at all, Tim. That's a great recommendation. I shall seek that out, because, as you say, it is very refreshing to see that.
It feels like the first thing that I've seen that tries to deal with it in this way. And the second season's actually got Mahershala Ali in it as well, who I'm a massive fan of his work. So he's come in. He's in the second.
Oh, well, I'm definitely anything he's in.
So
I'd pay to watch him read out the menu at Kentucky Fried Chicken or something, or McDonald's, or the phone book.
I'm much the same. So yeah, so that would be a recommendation. Would be Ramy. I did see on you can watch this online. Casey Affleck has got a film out called Light of My Life, which he is in. And again, I pay money to watch Casey do pretty much anything as well. But he's also written and directed it. It's a kind of post-apocalyptic world that he's in. I guess it has some kind of resonances with our current situation in that there's been some kind of virus has happened, which has wiped out most of the female population. So slightly different to COVID, but he is alive in this world with his daughter, and he's trying to protect her, but also not let people know that it's his daughter. So she's pretending to be a boy.
Because they're so scarce to female that they're in danger, exactly. or being whatever.
And there's a sense that it's become slightly dark, this world, if you are one of the few surviving females of the species. So
I recall the Casey Affleck movie that I didn't see. Maybe it came out online and maybe it never got in the cinema. But yeah, I recall it, and I didn't know it was this one, Light of My Life, and I didn't know what it was about actually. So this is a good shout.
It's interesting. There's actually an interesting connection back to something we were talking earlier, because a few years ago I worked with Casey on a show that we were filming in Canada, HBO series, which never saw the light of day. It was the whole thing was shut down, and we will never see it. We shot for 3-4 weeks, I think. Anyway, I won't go into the details of it because I'm probably not allowed to either.
Yes.
But anyway, there is no show, but I did work with Casey, and so I kind of was interested in what he was about to do next. And for a while, I knew that he was doing this project, and I originally thought it was a film by Deborah Brannick, who made Winter's Bone, which is also a similar story about a man and his daughter. And that film actually came out in the end, and I can't remember what it's.
The one that's set. They go off the grid and they live.
They go off grid, yeah.
And they live in the forest, and it's with that great Ben Foster and the young actress who's very good. I can't remember her name. She's really good.
But that's based on a book as well.
Yeah.
And I'd read the book, and I was looking forward to seeing Casey in this. But then it came out, because I like Deborah's work as well, but then it was Ben Foster, who I also like. But then I thought, well, whatever happened to I thought Casey was doing that, but then it turns out that he wasn't doing that. It was this was the film that he
Leave No Trace.
Doing. Leave No Trace is the other film, yes. So, yes, I could recommend Light of My Life, definitely. Those would be my two tips. And I think, probably, both slightly under the radar. I think Casey's film maybe would have come out this year, if not for COVID. I'm not sure. I think it did some festivals last year.
I think it did. And it may well have come out in some small way, just not made it over here. And sometimes we never know if they did. I'm always at the point now where I watch things, Tim, and I'm like, did I dream them? Because they do end up haunting your dream. So I have actually dreamt them. One sleeps in a bit of a funny way, I find. And I think, did I actually watch that, or did it? Did I make it up? Because I'm feeling sometimes I need a film. Maybe I saw the trailer and I'm filling in the gaps. I'm feeling so often that I need a new film. I kind of put one together in my own head. Are you doing any little Sometimes what we need are just little half-hour comedies, or we just need a little something, with the family. I don't know. Sometimes that's the thing. You think, well, can we all just watch for a moment and just all come together for?
Well, I mean, I tell you what I was excited about. I was excited that the Bake Off started again.
Yeah,
I was very pleased about that, because right at the start of lockdown, we don't need to get into this because I know where your allegiances lie, but I'm a Liverpool fan, and so when the lockdown obviously first started, most of my fellow Liverpool fans were, obviously panicking a little bit. But my first thought was, oh my God, there's not going to be any Bake Off. How are they going to do Bake Off? Obviously, the Liverpool thing I'm a bit concerned about as well.
Because we should say that you look like you might not win your first title in 30 years. That was you were worried that would be called off.
I was worried the whole thing would be null and voided, but actually I was more concerned that there wouldn't be a bake-off.
Well, luckily some musics last a lifetime, and the ones that Alan Lomax captured in 1959 are still on, and you keep that banner going in Southern Journey Revisited, Tim Plester. Fascinating talking to you about that and watching the film and hearing the music. It's a great journey, it's a really terrific sort of document. I think you should be really proud of that. That's a contribution you've made.
Thank you. I mean, it felt like something that we just wanted to document, as I think I said earlier. But in the end, I feel we've actually come out with something that's quite watchable and engaging and really quite kind of topical as well. We made it before the Black Lives Matter movement really kind of kicked into this second gear. We filmed it in 2018 during the midterm elections. Obviously now we've got the main elections coming up, so it feels very contemporary, and the issues are very important. And
and you don't duck out of them. There's a lot of Trump in there, and whether you would vote and who didn't vote for Trump, and it's not easy to work out where everyone's politics lies. Sometimes it's just about humans. You kind of think, oh, he's a Trump and he's a black or white, but actually they're just sort of human beings with everyday concerns.
That's what we try to reflect, really, Jason, and keep the politics kind of not front and center, but talk to people as human beings, and inevitably it came up in the conversations we had. I think partly because we were from outside as well. We were outsiders who'd come to their land, to their state, so it was just kind of what everybody was really talking about, or what everybody thought that people from outside wanted to have people's opinions of. So we tried to keep the film very agendaless in that way, and try and show both sides, and just show everybody as human beings with their own concerns, really. And there's pro-Trump and anti-Trump sentiments in the film, and we tried very much to kind of stay on the fence with it and just be filmmakers, really.
Yeah, and it's a music of survival that has survived for so long as well, as you say, with dark and light in it. So Tim Plester, thank you very much indeed. What an absolute pleasure to talk to you about it, and good luck with the Q&As as you
Thank you, Jason.
Tour the journey anymore, like Led Zeppelin you are. and good luck getting back on set and keeping clean and safe.
Thank you very much. Nice to speak to you. Cheers.
And okay then, let's go out on a bit more bluegrass country music.
He split first shirt of God. He split first shirt of God. The old people said it would never be done. He split first shirt of God.
That's the sound of the local honeys, who feature in Southern Journey Revisited by Tim Plester, my guest, and his co-director Rob Curry. You can catch the film at a few Q&As, notably one at the Rio in Dalston on October the 4th, hosted by the comedian Stuart Lee, and then they're at the Cube in Bristol, and they're in Belfast on the 17th. You can track the film down and its journey by going to fifthcolumn.org.uk. All of which twanging and rocking out brings us to an end for this episode. Lots of great stories in there, and of course some fine recommendations as usual. Hope you enjoyed all of that. If you did, let me know by emailing saggle@jasonsolomons.com, or just subscribe and rate, and if you like, review. Always lovely to hear from you and to get your feedback and find out if you've seen anything good lately. See you soon.